Well, thank everybody for being with us here today. I want to thank Appropriations Chair Greg Bonin and Senate Finance Chair Joan Huffman, as well as Senator Birdwell and Representatives Angie Chim-Button and Representative Kemple for being a part of this here today. Today we're here to talk about what Texas is doing moving forward concerning semiconductor chips. It's important that we start kind of at the beginning of it. Texas is the birthplace of the integrated circuit. In recent years, Texas has risen to be number one in the United States of America for semiconductor manufacturing. Over just the past year and a half, Texas has added billions of dollars of investments by semiconductor companies to expand semiconductor manufacturing capability, including the massive expansion for Samsung, Texas Instruments, as well as Globotech. But to achieve our promise for the remainder of this century, we need to pass the Texas CHIPS Act. Microchips and semiconductor chips, they are used in things that we use every day. That will be exponentially true with each passing year. Historically, most of those chips have been made in other countries, but supply chain problems and global conflicts could compromise access to those chips. That could cause America to come to a standstill in many of our activities. The United States recognized those threats and needs and responded by passing the United States CHIPS Act. That law provides incentives for American semiconductor research, manufacturing, and workforce development. The law encourages building manufacturing facilities here in the United States and boosting America's science and technology base. We share those goals. 2 years ago, before the CHIPS Act was passed, I created the National Semiconductor Tech Centers Texas Task Force. Their assignment was to bring together state government, the semiconductor industry, higher education institutions, and workforce stakeholders to ensure that Texas remains the national leader in semiconductor chip manufacturing, development, and exports. Then, the federal government provided about $52 billion in incentives to encourage semiconductor investment and innovation. This is a national competition to design and build the future of semiconductors. In reality, however, this is a global race for technology dominance. This is a race that Texas must win. We must win it for our state, for our workforce, for national security, and for our future. Chairman Bonin and Chairwoman Huffman and these legislators are charting that future with their legislation. And when they are done, I think Texas will not only remain number one in America for semiconductors, we will be number one in the entire world. To explain more about the legislation and everything that we're doing, I pass it off to Chairman Bonin.
Thank you, Governor. And Governor, thank you for your leadership on this critical issue. It's an issue of national security, and it's an issue of economic development. Texas has led, as the Governor explained to you, in this industry since its inception. And just as Texas has led as a state, our leaders in Washington have led, with Senator Cornyn and Congressman McCall, who carried the CHIPS Act through the United States Congress. Here in Texas, we have several pieces of legislation that are a very powerful statement about what Texas is doing in this area. The Texas CHIPS Act will establish several things. One will be a consortium with an executive committee that will take ownership and stewardship of a strategic plan that will be updated on a regular basis. We are also going to create a fund through which state assets can be used to accelerate and leverage our resources in the state of Texas. When you visit with the industry, when you visit with higher education, workforce is one of the most critical elements that is needed by this industry. And Texas is already, independent of the CHIPS Act, taking unprecedented steps in this area. So when you look at what is happening this session in community colleges, for example, a 23% increase in funding to our community colleges, paying for outputs where we will incentivize schools to matriculate students to a four-year school or have them graduate with a license or a certification. A multi-billion-dollar endowment for higher education that will allow us to grow the number of first-class research institutions that we have in the state of Texas to produce the engineers and the PhDs and the master's level professionals that are needed by this industry. We also have a very rich and excellent history with our Texas State technical colleges, who will also be making some capital investment into that strategy as well. I'm happy that we have the support of higher education, because one of the critical elements of this will be ongoing research and development in this area. Specifically, I want to mention the University of Texas system and the Texas Institute of Electronics that has really taken a leadership role in what is known as advanced packaging, and Texas A&M University that will help lead the state and the country, hopefully in a national semiconductor technology center, and really focusing on the high-end equipment that is needed, such as extreme ultraviolet lithography, which is an essential technology for the manufacturing and production of the most sophisticated chips in the world. We have led in this sector before. We lead now, and with the CHIPS Act and the investments that the state is making, we will continue to lead into the future.
Thank you very much. And now Senator Huffman.
And the Senate looks forward to working with the House and Dr. Bonin on this important legislation. We thank Senator Cornyn and Congressman McCall for bringing forth this critical legislation that, I think is going to, as the governor said, lead the state, lead Texas towards more involvement in the international economy. We already lead the country in our economy. I think that this only will bring us further down the road. To Dr. Bonin's point, we have been making significant investments, whether it's in higher ed, workforce, that will prepare Texas to be in a unique position as this industry develops. We're going to do a lot of work on improving our grid, strengthening our grid. That's going to be critically important to attract the industry that we want to attract. We look forward to working with university systems as we find, the right way to do this to make sure that Texas is number one, that we lead the nation. People continue to move here. Governor, you talk about that all the time, and this will just be another tool that will attract investment, attract an educated workforce, and we look forward to implementing legislation that can bring all this investment to Texas.
Sounds great. We'll take a few questions.